Welcome to a new episode of Israel at War. Today, I'm very privileged to have with me Rabbi Brian Schuldenfrei. He is the senior rabbi at the synagogue Adat Ariel in what I would call Greater Los Angeles. He might disagree with me.
For sure, disagree with that.
This is going to be a conversation, but we're going to discuss an important event that happened that made the news. And then we're going to go on to teachable moments, both for the other people that the rabbi and his congregation were involved with, and for all of us, what we can learn. So I'm going to ask the rabbi first to start with what happened, I believe, the first week in November. Well, first lay out the landlord, rent. Give us the background.
Sure. So first of all, it's a pleasure to be with you. And I am speaking from the epicenter of Los Angeles, the San Fernando Valley. Anyone who's on the west side of Los Angeles, we call we'll accept your admission into our greater city as well. But I am, as Phyllis said, I'm Brian Schuldenfrei. I'm the senior rabbi of a fairly large synagogue in the eastern portion of the San Fernando Valley. And I guess Phyllis's question was about the genesis of sort of this odd occurrence, this troubling episode that happened here in our community. So I guess we'll just begin with October 7th, which was and continues to be a day that was tremendously painful and really sort of, it just had a class with preschool parents, and that's all. We've just talked about Israel the whole time for 3 months because what else is there to talk about? And so our heart and our souls are broken. And as a demonstration of support after October 7th, we as a synagogue are proudly Zionist. We are proud advocates for Israel. And so we immediately, as many synagogues did and many rabbis, we immediately sprung into action, thinking about ways to support Israel emotionally, financially, intellectually, to help our congregants understand what was going on, current events in Israel, and also to galvanize the community as a center of support and strength for our people. Part of that was, hanging Israeli flags and giving notice about the publicity surrounding the hostages and all sorts of different materials and different expressions. I don't think any would be surprising. Many synagogues throughout the country have kind of what we follow. We did what everyone else was doing. Maybe what was one sort of unique aspect, and this leads into the incident that Phyllis will go into, is that we have a very large campus, and in the back of the campus we have a school building. There's a school building with classrooms and a basketball court and all a full school facility, and a charter school rents out that building.
Would you like to explain and what charter school means in California?
Sure. So a charter school in California means it is a public school, but it has a charter for a particular educational bent or purpose. So and it sort of operates outside of, I'm not an expert in this, but loosely outside of the Department of Education and therefore of LAUSD, and therefore it gives the school a little bit more autonomy in terms of the materials that it's teaching, the way it engages students, the way it builds community, their faculty. So it is fully funded by the state, but a public school, but a school that's not districted. Students aren't assigned to it. Students apply for charter schools.
Thank you.
We have a charter school called Citizens of the World that rents out that space in the back of our campus.
And so what happened with Citizens of the World?
Great. So, I want to just, I think it's important to say that up until the events of, until for a year and a half, it's been really a very nice relationship. As I was telling Phyllis before we went on live, that we put up the synagogue sukkah, and we had so many questions about like what the sukkah was. We designed educational materials so that the families that were just coming through the campus for the charter school, they were curious, and so we wanted to provide the materials so they can have their questions answered. It was a really nice relationship. There was it's a school that is dedicated to multiculturalism, and was a nice tenant for us to have in terms of their appreciation of Jewish life, and it was a good relationship.
And at this point, it's only K-2. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not I don't remember it's K-2 or K-3, or it's TK, which is transitional kindergarten, so a little younger, but it's the youngest of the young in elementary school. We're not talking about sixth graders. We're talking about, like TK, 4-year-olds, maybe like the oldest kid is 7 or 8.
Okay, this is important, as you
for sure.
listeners will learn in the story.
For sure, yeah. So after October 7th, many of their students from the charter school will come across our part of the campus to gain access to the school building. Not all of them, and that is something that we actually enjoyed. I'd be in Daily Minion, and you'd hear the kids coming in from school, and it was really like it's a lovely sound to have. The sound of children is a lovely sound. And the courtyard became a really nice place of gathering and for the community. So we were really, it was great. We were very happy with it. After October 7th, we hung Israeli flags throughout our courtyard. In fact, I'm looking out now, and Israeli flags are all hanging from the pillars of our courtyard as a demonstration of our support and solidarity with Israel. Few weeks after the flags were hung a day or so after October 7th. Maybe a few weeks later, I don't remember the exact chronology, I received an email from one of the school administrators inquiring about the flags. And it wasn't a very sensitive email. It was an email that essentially asked when are the flags coming down. So instead of responding to the question, I said to the administrator, I'd love to have a meeting with you. And I think the administrator was caught off guard when I told her how offended I was by her email.
Can I quote what you said at a subsequent press conference?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
That after 9/11, no one would have said about people hanging up American flags, when are you going to take them down?
Exactly. Exactly. That point I was getting to. Thank you, Phyllis. That that no one would have imagined that after the greatest tragedy to befall our people since the Holocaust, like to walk on and to ask us in our own home, when are you taking down those flags, reeked of insensitivity and like, what we would say is, chutzpah. I mean, like in like a real deep and troubling way.
Wait, I just want to say something. I like to keep reminding people, what is the name of the school? Citizens of the World. Okay, sure. Keep going in terms of...
Yeah, sure. So, well, that becomes more ironic later on, actually. And the truth was that even before this email, the school, there was Worldwide Kill a Jew Day. Remember that when that was announced? So, on Worldwide Kill a Jew Day, the school, recognizing that it was located on a synagogue campus, had understandable security concerns. We really went out of our way to help and to make sure to try and ease their discomfort. It's their children, and we take the safety of their children even today, despite how the relationship is kind of been tested, the safety of their children is a paramount concern of ours and continues to be. But so we, getting back to the story, they had not really. We were hoping, I was hoping for a much more loud condemnation of Hamas from the organization, which did not come, or was equivocating at best, the both sides kind of letter. But they are tenants, and I expressed some frustration privately towards administrators. And it's their school. It's not my school. And that was one little ripple. The email, the comment about the flag really raised concerns for me. The administrator apologized and said she was unaware at how tone deaf her comment was. And then after I said, it's not the equivalent of 9/11, it's actually the equivalent of 10 9/11s for our people. So magnify it. She apologized. She must have gone off, and apparently she was expressing the concerns of two of her staff members. I told her at the point, I'm offended by what you asked. And parenthetically, I'd like you to know, we have no plans on taking down the flags. We are not taking down the flags. If you don't like the flags, that's too bad. Like, it's not our concern. It is incredibly offensive for you to walk onto our space and tell us what you find compelling and what you find disturbing. It's not, and essentially telling them to mind their own P's and Q's. Several weeks later, the chronology is kind of blurring, but several weeks later, I was actually leading a congregational trip, a civil rights trip in the South. And I had just the day before.
I think this is the first week of November, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I was on the Edmund, because it was during election day. Yeah. I was on the Edmund Pettus Bridge with my son. And I remember when we crossed the bridge, I pulled him aside and I said, this is really important. I pulled you out of school to go on this trip with me. And I did that because I want you to know that when you face hatred and when you face evil, you have the obligation to stand up. And that's what the story of this bridge is. The story of this bridge is people who stood up to the worst expressions of humanity. And I want you to take that lesson. And I want you to remember this time on this bridge when you're faced with the ugly side of humanity. The next morning, it's like absurdly early in the morning, our phones are blowing up. Congregants are texting us and showing us a social media post from one of the teachers. Parenthetically, subsequently, we learned that it was one of the teachers who had expressed their discomfort and their dissatisfaction with the flags, the Israeli flags in our courtyard. We received notice that the teacher had made these awful social media posts boasting about a lesson on the Palestinian genocide, boasting that her children got it after her guidance, boasting of one child who commented that, why don't they find somewhere else to live? They being the Jews, and a little heart emoji next to that statement. I mean, what an endearing expression of love that is, to suggest that the Jewish people should find their way to the Mediterranean Sea. So we got.
Could I interrupt for one moment about that social media? One of the parts of the social media that really, on top of everything else, upset me is that the teacher chose, instead of math class, she bragged that there are more important things than math. So parents who thought their kids were learning math, it was not that she was a social studies teacher. I want to make it really clear.
And not only that, these are first graders.
Yes, these are first graders.
These are kids who are learning how to unpack their lunchbox and to sit in a chair, and they can't, many of them are learning how to write their ABCs. and they're being like, this is the youngest of the young to unilaterally decide that the curriculum and all of the lessons and infrastructure that have been given to you are superseded by your need to talk about some alleged genocide is just utterly confounding. And what it underscores is a clear obsession with a real insidious agenda, which is the destruction of Israel. Right, that you can deem it so important to teach 7-year-olds about the genocide that Israel is perpetrating against the Palestinians, and therefore all school is canceled today. So the 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds, we're going to learn about the bad Jews today, and at the end of the lesson learned is they should go find a place to live, not here. Send them to the sea. Well, I mean, it was utterly horrifying. It was especially horrifying that it was taking place on our campus. You know, a community that has known struggle, that has felt survivors of the Holocaust, a community that has felt the families that have directly felt the impact of anti-Semitism, and also families that are, you know, siblings who are serving in the IDF, and siblings and family members who were killed on October 7th or kidnapped on October 7th. I mean, it was to think that our campus had been desanctified by this you know, this is a place of gathering for our community, and that had somehow come into our own home was horrifying. We immediately sprung into action, and we called the school administrators, and the school administrators assured us that they were on top of it, that they were aware of the situation, that the teachers were already removed.
Okay, let's talk about that. There was a second teacher, because we didn't explain that.
Yeah, so one teacher posted, but apparently there were 2 teachers who taught these lessons. They were grade level partners, both first grade teachers, and they had decided together in tandem that they were going to, you know, cast aside the lesson plans that had been given, and that they were going to throughout the process, we actually learned that they actually didn't make it a state secret that they were doing this, that they had actually raised these issues with the school. They had raised the issue with the school administration. The school administration said to them, allegedly, that this was not an acceptable lesson plan and not to do it.
Oh, I have not heard that. That's interesting.
However, there was no guidance given by the school administration, and certainly no oversight. Like, after, these are the same 2 teachers that voiced complaints about the Israeli flag, who, in the words of their administrator, were anti-Israel, who then publicly proclaimed a desire to teach about the Palestinian genocide. The administration, in its infinite wisdom, decided that they would just say, don't do a lesson, but not follow through and like make sure that the lessons that were there, in fact, taught, they were given loose guidelines that they should teach about hatred or human rights. Teaching a lesson about human rights, that was okay, but they couldn't use an example of the alleged Palestinian genocide. And so there was no oversight, which is,
and no consequences, no stated consequences, that if you
even consequences. So if a teacher says, I want to teach a lesson, and the administrator and the teacher is insistent on on promoting a certain agenda, you would think that the administration would then be kind of like flag it as something that needed oversight, and to make sure that the structures and the rules of the students, before there was a transgression, you would think that the administration, that's what administration should do. They should assure that, wait a second, this is going off the tracks. Before it goes off the tracks, let's make sure it stays straight. They didn't do that, which makes you wonder, why didn't they do that? I don't have an answer for that, but it does make me wonder. So there is we found this all out as everything is unfolding. The school, now back to the initial phone calls that morning, school assures us they're dealing with it. We said, let's keep in touch. We're going back and forth on the phone. We're trying to deal with it. The next, even then later on that day, I'm in Montgomery, Alabama. Throughout the day, I'm getting calls, the press, this, and I'm trying to fend everybody off. And I'm telling the school, this is exploding. You need to deal with this, because I can't keep silent for much longer. You need to get out in front of this. Your parents are going crazy. They're all contacting me. Your community is up in arms about this. And you need to, I don't want to jump ahead. This is your school. You have to clean up your mess. Don't worry, Rabbi, we'll take care of it. Don't worry, we're on top of it. We're on top of it. The next morning, I get back at 1:00 in the morning. I'm back in the office that next morning at 9:00 in the morning. There are 40 preschool parents in my office.
Wait, let me clarify. Not your preschool parents.
No, my preschool parents.
Your parents,
because
okay.
They and everybody, my preschool parents, we're the only preschool that's operated. They are the elementary school. My preschool parents.
Okay, just had to clarify.
Upset and feeling the violation, but also safety concerns, because when this teacher had posted, she had posted pictures of the campus. So there was safety concerns, and there was the upset, and it was commingled. It was 9:00 in the morning, and I'm like, wow, this is, and the phone is still ringing from all the Jewish press that want interviews. And so as soon as the parents leave my office, I walk over to the back to the school building. I sit down with the lead administrators of the school, and I'm like, guys, this is terrible. Like, this is, and this is the first time that we're having a sit down conversation about it. So there's 2 points that I wanted to be clear: that they needed to respond, which point they assured me that they would have a very clear response out by early in the afternoon. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to understand was the chronology of events, because we had only spoken, a few minutes here, a few minutes there on the phone as I'm in Alabama there. So what were the chronology of the events? And at which point I learned that they had actually known about this post. I learned about it on a Tuesday. They actually knew about it on the Friday before. What? So my question is, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you deal with this? Why had this sit on your desk for an entire weekend? And then the Monday, how did it just sit there? How did you not deal with this? How did you just allow this to lie latent? The response I got was, well, there was a professional conference, and then we didn't want to disturb this one and that one, at which point I felt myself getting really hot under the collar. And I said, how dare you? That you're housed on a synagogue campus. This is an issue of safety. This is an issue of hatred. This is a clear threat against our people. You're a tenant here. And we're in the wake of the greatest tragedy since the loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust, and you decided that your professional conference superseded the need to inform us about anti-Semitism on our campus. Are you crazy? apologies, apologies, apologies. At some point, you stop listening to all the apologies because there's no action that follows. So I wait for the afternoon. I don't get any communication. I'm not told of anything. By the next morning, prior to the school day starting, I'm texting with their administration and I'm saying, I don't know where you didn't give it. Did you send out something last night and not send it to me?
Can I
You send out-
clarify one thing? As I understood it, there were 5 of these schools under the same umbrella. So when you say administration, are you still dealing with the administration of this
No,
particular
we're dealing with both the
school
local and the
and the
over.
citywide? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
yeah,
what I
yeah.
wanted
No,
to
we're
know.
dealing
So,
with both the local principal and the executive director of the whole network.
okay, so that's
Yeah.
what I wanted to clarify.
Yeah. From the outset, from we were always dealing with
Okay,
not the
go
Israeli
ahead. Just
flag
wanted
portion, but with the postings from the teacher, we were dealing with the entire administration. So I'm texting both of them in the morning and I said, did I miss something? Did you send out an email that I didn't see, that didn't get delivered in my inbox? No, we had a very late night. We had healing circles very late in the night and we didn't have a chance to write the statement. And I said to them, that is absurd. I do you not recall our conversation from yesterday? How could have you thought that this was anything other than your top priority to get a statement out? Because I just don't understand. Like, if you're going to apologize, you're sitting on this apology. You need to be in charge of this. You need to clean up. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. At which point I said to them, I'm gonna have to step back for a second. I need to consult with other people about this. We're clearly not talking the same language here. And that's what we did. And we look, more than anything, in terms of like lessons learned, because I know we're now like a month, more than a month after the fact. For several people have asked me, like, why did we call the next day? We called a press conference.
Yes, and as you said, I'm just going to say it's very rare for a rabbi to call a press conference.
Right. So we struggled with that, at least initially, and then it became very clear what we needed to do. Because more than anything, and I still believe that the course of action, the path, the process was correct. It didn't yield the result that I wanted. But I wanted to deal with them behind closed doors. I wanted them to work out the right solution on their own and for them to internally handle it with me consulting with them and me helping them and assisting them. And every opportunity, though, that I gave them to do that, every time it was frustrating. It was at a minimum obtuse. My mind had a litany of questions in terms of, wait a second, is this really what's going on? But I do believe that the best way to handle something is to try, when you're in a conflict with someone or you're feeling, is to try and deal with that person quietly. Calling people out in public is not my preferred course of action. I think social media is littered with this. I think it's despicable. I think it's disgusting. I think it does nothing for humanity and for this country. I think that we've become so adversarial. We've lost empathy for one another. We've lost the capacity to listen to one another. I mean, really calling people out in public is antithetical to like the kishkas of my soul. And I felt like I had no choice here. I was desperately trying to get them to do the right thing and to steer them towards that course of action, and nothing but they came to that result after we called the press conference. So we called the press conference. We let them know that we would be speaking about what had transpired. By the way, it wasn't like, yes, it is unusual that a rabbi would call a press conference, of course, but maybe even more unusual people to come when a rabbi calls a press conference, right? Like, oh, a rabbi's speaking, on Shabbat, they fall asleep when the rabbi speaks. So like, why is this going to be any different? But we wanted to make a statement because the articles were already being written.
Yes.
We were told by the reporters and throughout the community and people that were, we're in LA, so everyone knows, like, people are telling us, we're writing this story. Do you want to be part of it? We're writing it, like, we're going to print with you or without you. We have enough to write a story. We have the timeline, we have all the events. Do you want a comment? I was hopeful that by the time they hit print, that the school would have issued an apology and taken, committed to corrective steps, and that could have wrapped up the story with a nice ending. And so I was hopeful that would be the result, and that we wouldn't need to have like sort of a more public display, but that it would wrap up by itself. When that didn't happen, when that wasn't happening, that's when we called the press conference. And I stand by that because I feel like that, there is a necessity. Sorry, I'm buzzing over here. There is a necessity, while I believe in the importance of sitting down with people, looking them into their eyes, hearing their narrative, understanding their narrative, and together working towards resolution of conflict. At a certain point, especially with the preponderance of anti-Semitism that's erupting, not only in this country, but throughout the world, we have to model for our people a correct course of action, which is to stare down the hatred and to simply say, this is unacceptable. To call it out for what it is. You see that now on, with these college presidents who cannot, in simple language, condemn the calls to the genocide of the Jewish people. There is no context to that question. It's a yes or no. It's a simple question. And I think that we as a people need to model to the world, rabbis need to model to their communities that tolerating anti-Semitism, sort of cowering in the corner in the face of anti-Semitism, is not a solution that is tenable for our communities. And we have a call to action as a community, and it's uncomfortable, and it is confrontational, and it is ugly, and it is not why I became a rabbi. But at this point, like, we have to call out, you have to call a spade, and so that's what we did. We called it out. We called it out as hatred. We called out the administration for a minimum being morally obtuse, and at a minimum, and being negligent in their duties to oversee these teachers, that they allowed these teachers to run amok in their school, that there was no supervision whatsoever. And it begs questions that I don't have answers to, but it certainly begs questions for me of, like, how is that allowed to happen? I don't have the answers to those, but I certainly have those questions. And it was I felt an obligation in a very clear fashion to call them to task for their inappropriate and reprehensible handling of this situation.
So we're coming close to the end of our talk. So there's just a couple of things now I think are important. What were the consequences of the press release? I understand that 2 teachers were let go, and that correct me.
Yeah.
And then have there been any things, has there been a healing process since then on the campus?
So I want to be careful here
Okay.
because I want to be, I want to, assume the good in everybody. And I want to, um, always leave room for reparations and, for resolution. Um, and also like to end stories saccharine sweet, I think is disingenuous as well.
Okay.
So what the two teachers, I don't know if they were let go. What I know is those two teachers are not on campus anymore. No one's ever told me whether those two teachers are employed at a different campus for this school. I have no idea. I don't know. I do know that the executive director of this network of schools did call for an independent investigator. I told the independent investigator much of what I've told you. I mean, this is like sort of an old conversation for me. They hired a law firm to conduct this investigation, and I spoke to the independent investigator. If that investigator has filed a report, I'm unaware. If that report has been dealt with in any way, I'm unaware. I don't know any results of. I don't know any results. All I know is I had a 45-minute conversation with a lawyer, a few weeks ago, but I have not heard of anything other than that. And I haven't been part of any other, that was the last contact I've had, concerning the issue.
So that's for now where the story ends. But I want to say that this is a very important cautionary tale for those of us American Jews who expect respect. We give respect to others, multicultural, and we expect it in return, but that's not necessarily going to happen. And we have to, and a rabbi will understand I'm not criticizing him. In retrospect, the insensitive email about the Israeli flags was a hint of what might be going on, that it was only the tip of the iceberg. And for those of us who are working against anti-Semitism, I think we need to take these tips of the iceberg more seriously.
For sure. Without commenting too specifically, when that occurred, we of course recognized that it had further implications than just that. And our antenna were up in terms of what was going on. It's difficult. It's a difficult world we live in. I mean, I'm talking to my congregants now. I have the benefit of largely, I live in a beautiful community that is so supportive of our advocacy, on behalf of the Jewish people and on behalf of Israel. And so I feel really blessed to be a servant to that community and to be their leader at this time. Particularly those members of our community, who find themselves in progressive circles. Since October 7th, it's been really hard because they feel like, like much of the, they feel like their paths have diverged from people that they've fought for with uncertain causes, and they've really tried to be allies and advocates in different arenas, and they feel now left alone. I just had a meeting right before this phone call. I had a meeting with someone about that, and it was painful to listen to what they're going through, the loneliness that they are experiencing with people that they thought they were ideologically, yeah, exactly. They believed the same things. They had the same value system, and they were hoping for the same kind of world. It seems to me that the world that the world, or at least, portions of I'd say the more, progressive left, or the, further to the left, have fallen into this, to this notion that there's a binary, and that everyone, every conflict, or every every story can be told through the lens of this binary. The binary is the oppressor and the oppressed, the victimizer and the victim, the white and the non-white, and and it's all about victimization, and it's all about what one did to the other, and how one group oppressed the other. And it's a binary, and there is no room for shades of gray. There is no room for a nuanced narrative. Anyone who has studied the Israeli-Palestinian conflict knows that it's an incredibly complex issue that warrants serious consideration, and not like some soundbite on TikTok, and then some idiot to like chant from the river to the sea. Like, it is. And I'm fearful of our society, that we've become a society of such like reactionaries to this binary narrative, and I think it's really the Jewish community is really feeling it right now.
I'd like to add one thing to that comment. On my other podcast, co-hosted Never Again Is Now podcast, we recently interviewed Ayan Hirsi Ali, and she gave a very important warning. She said that the Jewish community has to reevaluate who we've been supporting, and really understand that they aren't necessarily supporting us. We need to know who our friends are. We need to know who the funding sources are for some of these groups that are supposedly, for example, Muslim-Jewish friendship groups. We need to look deeper and look at funding sources. I'm not going to go into a suspicious one I found this week, but we all have a responsibility, after we get through the pain of feeling betrayed by who we thought were partners, to figure out how we can find partners who are, I don't want to say on our side, but who understand our position and will help us. And we all have a responsibility to educate people as much as possible, to be able to say, this is who I am. This is who I've always been.
Sure. Look, and I think that most sound-minded people, like, I'm okay with someone criticizing Israel, right? That's not what was occurring here. What was occurring here was, first of all, to believe that you can teach
7-year-olds
about an enormously complex 100-year-old conflict is absurd, and inappropriate, and reeks of a clear agenda. What I find shocking and surprising is not the criticism of Israel's course of action, but in the quick jump to the accusation that Israel doesn't have a right to exist. And so that's when we cross the line between a political opinion that I may or may not agree with at certain points, and an anti-Semitism. In my mind, that once you say, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, that's anti-Semitism. And unlike, the esteemed congresswoman from Michigan, who tries to say, no, it's an expression of human rights. I'm not so sure that the Jewish people should agree with that, where the river to the sea means that we're in the sea, and that we're wiped off the map. And so I think that we have to call that there is a new anti-Semitism out there. And I think as we've spent a lot of our time and resources and community energies understanding past expressions of anti-Semitism, I think it behooves us also to understand this new insidious anti-Semitism that is erupting on the left side of the political spectrum.
And I would just make a plug for the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance non-binding definition, which I will include at the bottom of this description, which is really good because it explains what is legitimate criticism of Israel as an example, so that it makes it really clear to understand. And I highly encourage people to become familiar with these examples, because it will help you respond to people from an educational point of view and not screaming.
And I think that, Phyllis, if I could interrupt you just as maybe my last word here, like I really do, I still believe that the conversation, I do believe that conversation is helpful. And I do believe explaining your position and your perspective is helpful. And I do believe that the way that we engage this is sitting down with people that we have relationships with, either professional or personal relationships with, and hearing, owning the complexities and the shades of gray that that are clearly present in difficult situations, but also helping people understand that a false binary is really blinding, and really damaging. And so I believe in that. And this case is not an example of that. This is a case of needing to yell loudly. I still stand by that. There is a time to yell, like in the words of Ecclesiastes, in every season there's a different call, and this was a call to yell. I don't relish that. I hope that in more seasons to come, of more opportunities for people to sit in conversation with one another, caring conversation.
I think that's a lovely way to end. I thank you so much for giving your busy time, but I think that this story, and not meaning a fictional story, but what happened is very important to understand, and your challenge to how all of us can do better on our part. So I thank you. And as I've been ending these shows recently, I say, bring them home.